Welcome, hello, good evening, good morning, whatever time of day it is and wherever you are, thank you. Thank you not least because you made it through probably the longest invitation in the history of Facebook. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to read that and that you took the time to respond, to let me know where you're at with things. And in this first introductory video of the phase 2 of this creative uprising movement, I really want to do a few things for you. I want to give you a sense of what to expect, what my hopes are, what my dreams are, what my absolute commitment to you is, and to answer a few questions you might have, and also, more than anything else, to share some really valuable things with you. Even if you decide that the creative ignition journey is not for you at this stage, I really want to make sure that you feel a valued part of this community, of this movement. And so I'm going to share with you things that I think will help right now. And my number one goal always is to be of service, and I put it out there in a pretty big way. I want to reach 200,000 groups of people like us meeting around the world, contributing to £1 billion per year of contribution to social projects, all through the vehicle of an international play day. And so much of this is about play, about what game you want to be playing, and how we as a community, as a movement, can support each other to play the game of our greatest joy. And so what I'm really passionately believe I can serve you to achieve, and that we will together help each other to achieve, is a fundamental shift in being, a shift in being. From struggle, from a lack of clarity, a lack of self-worth, all of these things that plague. I say plague you, but what I really mean is have plagued me in the past, and I guess from some of your responses are things that you're doing battle with right now. So it is a fundamental shift in being, and I believe that if we can create that together, it will help you to achieve, create, be more than you imagine possible. So that's really what this comes down to. And so to help you achieve this shift of being, but perhaps I should explain what I mean by that. I think it more than anything else, it is about supporting you to be a whole person, so that the whole of who you are can show up in the world in its fullest way, and through that you can really experience far more joy, far more openness, far more lightness as well. And there's three main things that I'm going to help you, and together, again, I keep saying this together because this is very much going to be a co-created journey and a co-created movement. So simply I feel called to do this, but every one of you watching this right now is going to be a part of what we ultimately create. And it's going to start with three things. Connection is the first thing. Connection to your whole value, the whole of who you are and the whole of the value that you bring to the world. Really helping you to discover your brand. And I don't just mean like your logo, but actually what your promise is to the world, because ultimately that is your brand. And helping you discover your pearl. And by that I mean, you may have seen the story doing the rounds. There was this guy who kept this giant pearl. It's like this big, and he kept it in his home as like an ornament. He's just like, oh, that looks nice. Turns out this giant pearl was worth about $75 million, and he just kept it sitting around in his house. He may have even used it as a door wedge. That's what we're talking about. And I believe every one of us has that pearl. In here, each of us have this pearl, this thing of inestimable value to the world. And so the first stage is really helping you connect with what that is. Because from that connection comes clarity. Comes a sense of what needs to happen right now, in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term. Helping you to really develop a vision and an action plan for where you want to go with your gift, and for how that gift might show up and be shared. And when you have this clarity that is born of this connection, then what you really have is power. You know, certainly for myself, I can say that knowing that this movement is what I have to bring into the world, I feel hugely empowered just to say, you know, forget all of that other stuff that might hold me back, my lack of confidence, my you know, my lack at times of technical knowledge. All of that stuff, you know, it really becomes irrelevant when I know where I want to be going. And that's impossible if you don't have the connection to your whole self, to your true joy. But then you need to have that clarity of where you want to go, what's the action plan going to look like. So we have connection, we have clarity, and then it's about confidence. Actually having the confidence to share and to execute your action plan, to share your gift with the world, and to deliver your greatest value in the way that works most for you. And so that's really the three kind of elements is connection to your gifts, clarity of how you're going to share those gifts, and then the confidence to actually start sharing them. And if you've come across my book or seen some of my posts, you may know that this kind of maps onto the three elements that I share in my book, which is discovering your gift, developing your gift, and delivering your gift. And and that's another reason why I'm so grateful, because it's only in the process of creating this for you that that kind of deeper level of what's required, connection, clarity, and confidence, has really come through to me. And I believe that if we can get those elements working together, then what is created is a place for yourself where you are inspired, you are alive, you are in your flow. And that, I believe, has massive impact, not just in how you might, you know, make money from whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is that you love doing, whatever it is you consider to be your gift, but it maps onto how you're a parent, a husband, a wife, a mother, a father, a friend. And that's what I mean when I say this is about fundamentally supporting you, serving you to create a shift in being that will impact every single part of who you are, because we're going to be dealing with the whole you, the whole of who you are. And perhaps when we think of what are some questions that might be coming up, you might be thinking, well, you know, George, all I've seen is some Facebook posts from you. You know, you've maybe seen me perform, and you know, you're wondering, you know, can you actually deliver? You know, can you create this shift in being? And at this point, this is where you know, in the traditional way of doing things, I might reel off some kind of CV, like, oh, he's spoken on this many stages and with these famous people, Richard Branson, Ed Sheeran. Sorry, I've just got a bit of a cough there. And you know, I've performed my poetry on all these continents and you know, to all these TV audiences. But actually, fundamentally, that stuff is just information. And my belief is that the way that I can really give you a sense that I can support you on this is because I'm right here, right now. It has taken me the best part of 12 years to be standing before you, ready to do this. It's not just that I've done some awesome stuff, it's that I've been through the shit, really, truly. You know, to be standing in front of you now, to believe that I have gifts worthy of sharing. You know, I even did like a burial ritual. I literally dug my own grave and stepped into it and buried myself with earth, or got a friend to do that. You know, I genuinely didn't know whether I was going to come out of that. I didn't know if the breathing apparatus I used would malfunction and I literally would die. But I knew I needed to take some massive action to make a shift. And, you know, it really helped. I'll tell you more about that, you know, when we're on the Creative Ignition journey. But to really, again, kind of bring home this sense that I really know I can serve. I know I can be of service. I want to talk about gardens and monocultures, and about a new space that we, I believe, as a species, find ourselves in. You see, you may have been driving in the country at any point and you see just these forests and it's all these green pine trees. And the challenge with that is it's a monoculture. It's a single crop. And what it does ultimately is it's really not good for the rest of the surrounding nature that this monoculture is planted in, because it kind of stops any light from getting to the forest floor, and the needles falling down create a very acidic soil. So actually, where this one single crop is planted, no other life can flourish. And that's where a lot of us find ourselves. We exist in terms of our career, in terms of who we have to be in the world, as a monoculture. Our society loves to have these boxes, and you have to be doing this thing. And then everyone can understand, oh, that's, Katie, that's her thing. And, they have the label and they can understand. And, this used to really frustrate my parents because it just didn't work for me, this labeling. And I remember my mum was so thrilled when I started sharing my poetry a bit more fully. She was like, right, now my son's a poet. She had my sister who's a lawyer and my son who's a poet. And I think my brother and sister were still too young at the time. They were still, doing their A-levels and stuff. But she was thrilled that she could finally put a label on me. And full credit to my mother, actually. She's kind of been super, super supportive as my journey's gone on. And she kind of now realises that there's a bit more to it than that. And the idea of a monoculture and of this old story that we are shifting from. And when I talk about this shift in being, it is about shifting from the old story, which for me is kind of fundamentally represented by scarcity, by fear, and by violence as well, to a new story where it is fundamentally abundant, peaceful, and loving in nature. And that's not, I don't want to kind of come across as super hippie. We can see this happening on so many different levels, and we'll really be kind of digging into that on the Creative Ignition journey. But the monoculture, this old story, what it says is, essentially, is one thing grows at the expense of everything else. And so you maybe found it that you felt like in order to make money or to, you had to do this one thing. And actually it's not served you because you're at a point where that one thing is a part of you, but it's not the whole of you. And there's a kind of desperation for actually the whole of you to be able to show up and be recognised, be appreciated, and be rewarded as well. And so that's where the new story comes in, which is a shift from this monoculture aspect to one of a garden, where you are this whole garden. You are the trees, the flowers, the grasses, the soil. All of it is you. And the fundamental kind of aspect of the garden is that through interdependence, everything thrives. And when I found a way to just communicate that actually the whole of who I was about creating a more loving world and helping the human species create a new story, everything changed for me. Because suddenly my poetry and my youth work and the books I write and the things that I love to kind of speak about and the meals that I love to cook, I love cooking pancakes and chai and brownies. All of this stuff became a part of how I help to tell a better story for the human species. And so I really started to appreciate, I am this garden and here are all these beautiful things that are in my garden. Cool, let me just share them with the world. And it's been a profoundly challenging journey at times, but a super, super rewarding one. And so that's where we find ourselves, is that I stand before you here knowing that I am fantastic at helping people to discover the fullness of their gardens. And I hope that metaphor works for you. If you need to be a bit more specific, it's just to help you find a coherent way to express the whole of yourself in the world, to add value and to be rewarded. And fundamentally what we are doing together when we do that is we are helping to pioneer, and that is a key word we're going to come back to, is we're helping to pioneer a new way of being, a new way for human beings to tell the story of where we're going. And entrepreneurship fundamentally for me is a massive part of that. Transforming our stories around money, around how we do marketing, around how we sell, all of this stuff. It is fundamentally, when we are doing all of that, we are working on ourselves, and if we are working on ourselves, we are ultimately contributing to a more fruitful future for the human race, in my opinion. Within the journey, one thing I'm really going to try and do is to be a model for you. Not like this, although obviously being dashingly handsome, I could do that. But I think it would be more valuable to you for me to serve as a model of where I've been and what I've found useful, so that you can take from it what you will. But part of that, a really major part of that, is this image that I want to give you, which is of a hand up and a hand back. And it's an image that's been given to me a number of times, where there'll be times on the mountain where I will be, on the mountain, where's that come from? I'm going to explain. There'll be times where I will be, reaching back and giving you a hand up, because perhaps I'm one step further on the mountain. But there'll be times when I'll be sharing with you some of the amazing things that members of our community have done, and things they are pioneering. And I will be along there, I'll be there with you, getting a hand up as well. So it's a really fundamental thing, and it is part of this shift in being. Because it used to be the case, or it still is often, that you have this kind of person at the centre of the stage, and they're the centre of attention, and they're literally kind of telling you stuff. And it's a very one-sided relationship. And if you've got a one-sided relationship, then, in my opinion, the learning, the growth, the transformation can only be so deep and so profound. Whereas actually, if you have a kind of a total experience, and the reason that I do this is because if you think about the hand up and the hand back, ultimately, if we were together in a group, we'd be standing holding hands in a circle, and that is one of the central ideas that we're going to return to time and again, is the power of a circle. Every week down here where I live in Cornwall, I'm a member of a group called A Band of Brothers, and it's a national charity that does amazing work mentoring young men who've come out of the criminal justice system. And every week as men, we gather in a circle to support each other, to work on our stuff, to try and be better men, better fathers, better husbands, better mentors, so that we can create stronger, more vibrant communities. And we have a saying in Band of Brothers, which is that it's not us that is doing the work, it is the circle that does the work for us. So if we come and we populate the circle with our energy, our space, our intention, then we create a space for healing, for transformation to occur. And that's very much going to be my intention as we go on the journey together, as we pioneer this movement, is to create space where collectively we can support profound transformation to happen. Brilliant. So that's the first part of this video. Is, I've given you a sense of where I see things going, and of, I hope, some of the ways I feel I'm going to be able to help, but also the process around how we're going to support each other. Now, you may see here there's a bit of sweat going, the lights are super bright and super hot. So I'm just going to grab a sip of water, change over my notes so that we're going to shift into a bit of kind of the sharing part, where I've got a few things that I think, based on some of your responses to my questionnaire, is going to be valuable straight away. And then we'll just finish up with a little bit of a hint at what might come in the second video. So don't go anywhere, because it's going to be an instant thing. You're not going to notice I've gone for a cup of water. By the magic of computer editing, it's going to be instantaneous. How was that for an instantaneous change? Impressive. So I want to share with you, as a way of beginning this section of the video, a story. And it's called The Story of the Half-Opened Flower. Once upon a time, there was a flower. This flower was so stunningly beautiful. And every now and then, this flower would just burst open into life and show its radiant petals. And even the flower itself was like, oh, wow. And then something terrible would happen. At night, when it would close up, the next morning it would be unable to open all of its petals. And it was heartbreaking for the flower. Sometimes, some of its petals would just get stuck, and no matter what it did, it couldn't work out how to recapture that moment when it was open fully. Sometimes it had to keep itself hidden from bugs, from you know, the rainstorms, when the rains lashed down, it had to close up. Sometimes there'd be feet trampling. And the flower was, you know, was suffering. Sometimes it would just stand there, sit there in just a massive sadness, frustration at not being able to show all of its petals. Just this half-opened thing. And sometimes it felt like it would never remember how to be able to show its true self. Sometimes it felt like maybe if it changed its position, if it went somewhere else, or if it got a bit more sunlight, these things would make more difference. But still, nothing seemed to work. Still, the flower was just half open. Until one day, a bee landed on the flower. And at first, the flower was not so sure. It kind of, the bee tickled and woke something up in the flower, and slowly the flower began to open a bit, but was still a little tentative, a little unsure. And the bee just whispered to the flower, "It's okay. You're beautiful. We've all been waiting for this moment." And the flower was confused. What do you mean you've been waiting for this moment? And the bee gave a little laugh and said, "Don't you realise? Where do you think you are?" And the flower just instinctively said, "Alone." And the bee gave an even bigger laugh and said, "Trust me. Open your petals now and take a look around." And it's terrifying for the bee. Sorry, terrifying for the flower, but slowly, you know, never met a bee like this, and slowly opened up its petals as it had longed to do for so much time. And as the bee had suggested, the flower took a look around, and it realised it wasn't just a flower alone, but it was a part of an entire, whole, beautiful garden. And what was more, every single flower and grass and shrub in this garden had its eyes fixed on the flower. And the flower got a little bit kind of self-conscious, but was like bathing in this radiant glow, and it looked around itself and gasped in wonder, because it realised it wasn't just a flower. It was a beautiful blossom on the most majestic tree in the entire garden. And the flower just took a moment to breathe it all in, to suddenly realise what was going on, this like fundamental shift that had happened. And looking around, the flower, who now knew it was a tree, saw how it helped so many other members of the garden to thrive. The bugs that crawled beneath its kind of roots, and the ants that climbed up its trunk, the birds that nested in its branches, and the smaller bushes that it gave shelter to when the rains came. And the final thing the flower, this tree, saw was up in one corner of the garden. Queues and queues and queues of people who were lining up to come and marvel at the flower. And the flower just did the only thing it knew how, was spread its petals even wider and danced in the sunshine. I'd like you to take a moment just to let the story sit with you. And when you're ready, in the comments, just, we call it feeding the story. Give back some part of the story that stood out for you. What was the thing that really captured your imagination about the story, captured your heart? What nourishment, if any, did you receive from hearing the story? Go ahead and do that for a moment. And of course, if you need to, you can pause the video while you take it in, add a comment. So, for me, a really pivotal moment in that story was the arrival of the bee. And it seems obvious, but it's, you know, I feel so blessed that in my life I've had some truly amazing bees. The first one I can remember was my primary school form teacher. Her name was Mrs. Fryer, and I don't even know if she's still alive. If by some twist of fate she gets to watch this, Mrs. Fryer, thank you. Because Mrs. Fryer, she did the same job for me as the bee did to the flower, like help the bee to recognise its true beauty, true worth. Mrs. Fryer said to me, George's love of poetry will stay with him his whole life. And very profound words. And what Mrs. Fryer did was she gave me permission to kind of be an expanded version of myself. And I'd love you to take from the story that same permission for yourself, to allow yourself, as we go on this journey, to be the fullest, most expanded version of yourself, whatever that means to you. So to be your own bee. And one other thing is to be a bee for someone else. Appreciate them. Share with them the ways that they have caused you to go, wow. So please, if that story landed with you in any way, do those two things. Give yourself permission. Be your own bee. And find ways to be a bee for another person, to show someone else their true beauty, their true majesty. I want to highlight what I feel the bee really helped the flower to do. And I'm going to shift to a slide now for you so that I can kind of map it out. I mentioned the power of circles, and that fundamentally we are on a journey together to facilitate a shift in being for ourselves, for each other, so that collectively we can do our bit for helping the human story shift from the old story of violence, of fear, of scarcity, to a new story of abundance, of love, of peace. And fundamentally the old story is fueled by pain. And there's a really strong image that's landed with me lately, and I want to share it with you and see. It may land with you, it may not, but I feel called to share it with you. And the image is this. The old story is a triangle. And that means, you know, it's top down, it's hierarchical. It's about labels and monocultures. And fundamentally it is fed by pain. You know, we have a military-industrial complex that feeds on war. We have a vast pharmaceutical industry that feeds on ill health. We have a giant food sector that essentially feeds us food that is no good to us. So on so many levels, and the old story, that triangular hierarchical system, is represented by the office, the cubicle, where people sit in jobs that mean nothing to them, fundamentally crushing their soul, and ultimately that add so little value to the world. And we are shifting. I truly believe this, and I believe that we are pioneers of this. This creative uprising movement is part of pioneering this shift from this triangular way to a more circular way. Because within the triangular way, it is a very top-down way of transferring information, of solving problems. The top of the pyramid, the top of the triangle, if you like, solves the problem and then tells the people at the bottom how they're going to do it. And what that means is, and it happens in business meetings as well, you know, you get the kind of boss who sits there saying, anyone got any ideas? And everyone's too scared to say anything, and the people who are maybe extroverted say stuff, and the introverts who've got all the good ideas say nothing. And so fundamentally, you're only getting this, you're getting a half-open flower with the old story, because only half of the possible solutions and possible value is present. Whereas when we shift to a circle, then it is inclusive. A circle is a naturally inclusive. You can see everyone's faces. And if everyone is heard, then you have the maximum possible number of perspectives on the problem. And therefore, you can get the closest to the truest, most powerful solution. And I believe that if we can approach our lives from the perspective of seeing ourselves as circles, so that, like I said earlier, for me, the whole of myself, it can be present. My pancakes, my chai, my brownies, my love of cricket, of football, of surfing, of devouring as much knowledge as I can about how we as a species can create a better world, being a better father, helping people to tap into what their total gift might be and how they can start sharing it. All of this stuff is part of my circle. All of this amazing stuff that lights me up is a part of my circle. Whereas in the old story, I was like, right, I have this thing and I have to somehow... And so there was a period on Facebook where I didn't post for probably 6 months because I just felt like I was trapped in this, like, I have to fit into this way of doing things. And it totally went against what I felt in my heart was actually the right way of doing things for me. And then the circle really represents as well a reawakening of what I call the Renaissance soul. So Leonardo da Vinci was a biologist, an anatomist, a painter, a sculptor, an inventor. He was all of these things and more. I'm doing him a great disservice there. And he was pretty freaking good at pretty much all of them. So in this new story, the old adage of jack of all trades, master of none is absolute, I won't swear too much, but it's nonsense. We can be masters of a number of different things, and actually, if we are to really serve this new story, we need to have a good level of knowledge. We need to be present in a number of different ways so that we can add value wherever it's needed. So really, give yourself permission to be your own bee, to be a bee for someone else, and ask yourself, what would it be like if instead of being limited in a triangular fashion, you were your total whole circular self. I hope that lands, because it's something that literally sprang up within me or came through me in the last day or so, and it's very fresh. So I hope it serves. To finish up, I want to kind of give a sense of what you can expect in terms of how things might work, and maybe answer any questions that preemptively you might have. So maybe you're thinking, oh God, not another kind of course or training. I've got loads of them, or I've done loads of them. And fundamentally, this really, it's not just another course or training. This is the founding of a movement. I am committed to this. I've shared it publicly. It scared the hell out of me to do that, and I've been blown away by the response. Thank you. Yeah, it's very hard for me to put it any other way. We are embarking on an adventure because we are gathering as a circle to serve one another and to explore the wholeness. We are on an adventure. I've got 30 days of little 30-minute sessions on average that I believe are going to be really, really powerful, really useful. But ultimately, if as we go on the journey together, it seems like one of those things isn't going to serve and something really is really present, we're going to do that. So actually, this is going to be a co-creative process where what is really needed in the moment is going to be the thing we explore. And so we are genuinely going on an adventure. We are going to be pioneering. And it is going to be crowdsourced, insofar as I will be, when we look at things like marketing. I've been just having conversations with an amazing lady who's a member of the group. If Michelle is watching, great. I'm going to be sharing Michelle. I'm going to be sharing some things that Scott's been up to, another friend of mine. Each of these are people who, if I sit down at a table with them, I'm dumber than them in a number of different ways. And so I'm going to make sure that what I think they're doing that's pioneering is shared with you guys. Because if it helps me, then I feel like it could help you in that spirit of hand back and hand up. So it's not just another course or training. I really believe it's going to be a new way of doing things. And I couldn't tell you exactly this is what's going to be new about it, but I have this strong sense that it's a very new way of doing things. You may be thinking, I haven't got enough time. Trust me, as a young parent who's trying to build businesses and now is committed to bringing a movement to the world, that's something I'm pretty wrestling with. I do commit to hoping that it will average at around 30 minutes a day. Sometimes it will literally be a little 5-minute thing. I'm like, here's the thing, go to it. And it might take you 5 or 10 minutes. Other times we might need 45 minutes, maybe an hour to really, if things are moving and we're in the flow of it, I'm not going to stop. But on average, I believe it's going to be around 30 minutes a day for 30 days. And I feel like that's a very manageable time. If you can't make any of the sessions, they're all going to be recorded. And the magic of having this group is that any questions you have about the coming day's topic, I'll be able to answer them live in the session. And so if you send me your questions before the session, you can actually get your questions answered live, even if you can't attend. So I feel like that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's it on the enough time thing. And maybe you're thinking, Jesus, I've got a lot of stuff on, and I don't want to commit, like this movement thing, it sounds a bit big. Listen, I'm not asking for any kind of commitment at the moment. Simply, the metaphor I would use is one of swimming. These intro videos, this is the first one, there's going to be 2 more, are a way of allowing you to kind of dip your toes in, to kind of get a sense of what's going on. If you decide you want to come on the Creative Ignition journey, the 30 days, 30 minutes a day, that's like maybe we're going to go surfing, we're going to go on a surfing trip. So it's a commitment of time, you'll have to do a bit of paddling, but we're going to catch some waves, it's going to be truly amazing. You know, if you've never surfed before, it's going to be life-changing. Whatever that metaphor maps out onto. And then if you decide, hey, this is really something that, you felt a calling to be a part of something meaningful, to, feel like even your own personal growth and journey is part of something greater that you're contributing to in a way that fits you, well then great. Come on this movement. And the invitation, carrying on the swimming thing, is let's set sail on the 7 seas and become pirates. And there's an amazing blog post called the 10 things you know about pirates that are wrong. Pirates were massively into democracy and into kind of equal distribution of wealth, all these sorts of things at a time when it was essentially just slavery around the world. So, the invitation, if you really do vibe with this, is to come and be pirates with me. Because we are going to pioneer a new way of doing things, and ultimately that was what pirates did. So, yeah, I bet you didn't think we were going to be talking about pirates. So, we're going to wrap this video up, and I really hope I've given you a sense of what to expect, answered a few questions you maybe have, and given something that's of value. And this is ultimately, it is a flower that's unfurling as we go. And you are a part of it, and I want to thank you again. In the next video, we're gonna talk about the M word, about not money. We're going to talk about the M word that makes the money come, which is marketing. And I'm going to share with you in the next video the 2 things that are absolute game changers. They will transform how you communicate with the world. I don't make that promise lightly because it's a pretty freaking big promise, okay? So the 2 things I'm going to share with you are going to transform how you show up in the world, how you share yourself with the world. So I can't wait to share that with you, and thank you again for watching. Please pop up some comments, let me know what you loved about this video. You love seeing me sweating for you guys, whatever it might be. How did the story land, if it's still landing with you. Any other questions you've got, please pop in some comments. This is a co-created journey together, so let's start the co-creation. Go well, so much love, so much gratitude and thanks, and I'll see you in the next video, and probably online when I pop up as well.